I want to thank our sponsor, Planet Ford. Planet Ford has always been a proud supporter of law enforcement in the community, providing customer service and fleet management, sales, and service. If you're looking for that personal quality service, contact Planet Ford in Spring or online at planetford.com. You're listening to Crime Scene Today, where we discuss current and future issues in law enforcement, forensics, and crime scene investigation. I'm your host, Dan Zientek. Today's show is graphic in nature, discussing details of violent acts such as murder and may not be appropriate for all audience. Listen discretion is advised. So, Paul, thanks for coming back.
Absolutely.
Co-host today. It's great to be back in the studio. We're broadcast from downtown Conroe, Texas on Lone Star Community Radio. Show's available on all major podcast locations. At last check, I think we're being listened to in 15 different countries. So to all our listeners, welcome. So today we've done this before. We've covered a case, but this particular case that we're going to go through, sort of a true crime story. But the difference between us covering a case and most of the true crime podcasts, radio shows that you listen to is that both Paul and myself were actually detectives working the case and on the case. We have a team involved in doing that, but in doing so, and obviously our careers have moved on, and this is back at a time that we were both detectives and not having to supervise anybody and do all those things. But so let's talk about Jerry Denslow. So a little bit about Jerry Denslow. He was a 50-year-old male that was living alone, and he was an alcoholic. He had a problem with this, and he recognized this problem. He actually was going to be moving back in with his family. He was living by himself and had his house on the market, and actually what we'll talk about in a second as far as how the house was and those conditions that it was in. But he had decided to move back with his family, and the neighborhood that he was living in, many of y'all that are listening are not familiar with where we are. We're located in Conroe, Texas, and in Conroe and in Montgomery County there is Lake Conroe. It's a man-made lake and a pretty decent-sized lake, and there are communities built around that lake for people to enjoy all the things that come with lake living, and that was similar to this neighborhood. It was average subdivision lots, and I think the house was something about maybe 2,000 square foot,
give or take. Yeah, it wasn't big, it wasn't small, pretty average size.
So I mean, what anyone would consider a typical subdivision, but at the end of this subdivision, or I guess on the back side of the subdivision, was access to the lake.
Yes.
So there's a marina back there, so people that live in this community could go back and launch their boats and enjoy that. So that's sort of the idea in this community. Sits a little bit out from the city, so it's a suburb, I would say, of Conroe. It's sort of away from the downtown Conroe area, but probably about more 40 minutes from the city of Houston. So to give you an idea, Houston, Texas, being about 40 minutes away, and Conroe being to the north. So that's where this is. So the way we come about this is that, again, as I said, he was selling a house. Mm-hmm. So his realtor had been trying to get in touch with him and was having a difficult time getting in touch, so came by to check on him. And whenever he came by, obviously has a key to the house, found Jerry Denslow deceased in one of the bedrooms. Obviously, we get called to the scene. So, Paul, sort of describe, I guess, the scene as far as the house in general, the lack of things.
So, yeah, the house was very clear. He was fixing to move out. He's moving out of state. Considering it's a single man living there, I would have considered it a very, very clean house. I'm not necessarily a messy person, but I would not have had it spick and span as this. So you could tell it was clear he's prepping it for sale. There was minimal furniture in there. You had rooms that had just a desk. You had rooms that had absolutely nothing in it. You had his bedroom, which had his bed and a nightstand and a dresser. So it was minimalistic. And most of his stuff had already been packed up, and he was either in storage or had been sent on to the state that he was moving to.
And I know that, like when we first come into a house, we're automatically looking for what happened, right?
Absolutely.
And so when we look at this house, I mean, besides the fact that it's sort of empty, is there's no forced entry. I mean, the realtor didn't find any broken windows, broken door. I mean, there's nothing to
Right.
indicate that someone forced their way into this house. And and looking through, as you said, there's no furniture in these rooms. From what I remember in the kitchen, there was still it wasn't cooking, but there was things left on the stove, like
Like they just had dinner. Yeah,
right, had dinner the night before.
some
There's
gravy and stuff.
some beer there, and that type of thing. But there's no disturbance. There aren't things knocked over. I mean, not there are many things to knock over, but
But even the things that were there, like in the living room, he had a couch and a recliner, little table next to the recliner. His glasses were neatly laid on the table. The cigarettes were neatly laid on the table. The laptops. I mean, there was things sitting there as if somebody had just finished their evening and went to bed.
right, and that's where he's found. He's found
In bed.
He's found in the bed, and one thing that about the scene, he'd been there for a while.
Yes.
Okay, I remember walking in. There were numerous amounts of flies. Matter of fact, it was one of those where you sort of could see the ceiling moving, right?
And multiple generations of flies. You had dead flies. You had live flies.
So it was extended time, and I do remember. I'll just blame it on a patrol officer. It may have been a detective, but someone turned on the ceiling fan. I do know that, and flies scattered everywhere. So we took care of that. But he was covered up. So one thing that we're taught in our classes, when we find a victim that is covered, it usually indicates, not always, but it usually indicates that the person did not want to see them afterwards, that
Right.
there's some type of relationship between the two, that it's not a random thing. So, there's some connection usually when someone is covered up or trying to conceal a part of the body.
Right.
Right.
And that was kind of our trigger. That's what made us really become suspicious of the scene. We knew this guy was 50 years old. He was a chronic alcoholic. We knew there was a potential for health problems. So we at first didn't know going in if we had just a natural death or suspicious circumstances.
Right. So, in looking at the body, and this is not always an easy thing to do when someone has reached a level of decomposition, right? After many days go by, the body goes through many changes, and by this, sometimes it is harder to identify injuries,
absolutely.
right? So, it took a little bit of time. We're able to actually find that he does have a bullet hole. And so at that point, obviously, he's going to autopsy. We're going to find out further as far as his type of injuries. We didn't see a car on the scene.
No.
And I know neighbor said he owned a car. So
Correct.
and again, we can't make the assumption that the car's stolen. I mean, he's drunk. He could have gone to a bar. He could have got a ride home. There's
Could have
no
left it
telling.
in a ditch somewhere. Nobody knew.
But we don't have a car. The car's missing. He's been there for, I want to say, about 7 days, and obviously, as far as throwing a time frame out there, I know that's one thing that the TV's great for, as far as your crime shows or whatever. But there's not he died at 7:05
Right.
p.m. 7:05.
Plus or minus 12 to 24 hours is
Right,
more easy to do.
We go by the changes in the body and what's happening as to the body always goes through the same process
Right.
in decomposition, and what process they're in can give us somewhat of a determination, meaning obviously if he's in that type of condition, this didn't happen 2 hours ago,
Right.
but we're not narrowing it down to a specific
And the
time.
listeners have to remember, this was in July in southeast Texas, and the temperature inside the residence was 85 degrees when we walked
it's
in
hot.
there.
It's
so
hot.
it's going to advance the decomposition a little bit too.
So the next thing is the autopsy. But prior to the autopsy, some things that were going on. So again, we're trying to find who's responsible, right? What the motive is for this. And I remember one of the first things that we had. Normally, when we're dealing with these type of things, it's usually a relationship, someone who's close to them, right?
Right.
So okay, who's he dating? Who was he dating? That type of thing. And I remember one of the things that stuck out was, so we're looking through the house, and we find, and this is, this is in the 2000s, right? The internet exists,
Right.
but we found a video dating thing, like you record your own video for this dating service type stuff. So at this point, I mean, this opens more avenues. I mean, did did someone come in here under the video dating thing,
Right.
under a ruse, and kill him for money or car or whatever. Luckily, we didn't have to venture down that road too far. We do have an ex. That ex lived in Alvin. Now, Alvin, Texas is a good hour drive away from where we were.
Yeah.
And so, and an idea as far as how these things work. You see on TV, you see a lead detective, you see a backup detective. But I mean, there's a team behind this, right?
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
so there are many people involved in this investigation. And so I remember as far as I was with Keith Eccles, we were handling sort of run the errands, right? And I know that you and Kim Bivens were handling the scene and the interviews and stuff. So Keith and my job was to go and find his ex, right? And what we did find that we wanted to talk to her about was that Denslow had a protective order that he had already violated previously. Okay, so obviously their relationship was not good. It had ended in a way that she, again, had a protective order that he wasn't listening to. So we're heading down to talk to her. By this time, we've been up all day. We've had the evening and stuff. So we head down there trying to locate her. She wasn't at her house. She wasn't here. We're working with Alvin PD trying to find her to get some type of lead while you and Ken are still working the scene. And I remember we couldn't find her. We just left a message. It's like, hey, Alvin PD was going to keep checking back. Whenever she would come home, we would get in touch with her. And so I remember driving home, and by this time it's daytime. I mean, it's probably like maybe 8 in the morning, something like that. Had no rest. I know I fell asleep probably about a half mile from the house. I enter like the oncoming lane. I'm just focused. I got to get home and at least get some rest, right? And as soon as I get home, I get a call from Alvin PD. Say, hey, we found her. It's like, no, I
Not right now.
I need about an hour, right? So I called you and Ken, and I know that y'all headed out.
We went down there and picked her up at that point.
Because we still had, I guess, a little bit of time. We had about maybe 2 hours till the autopsy.
Right.
So Keith and I were going to head to the autopsy. Y'all were heading down there. So y'all found something out in Alvin about, I guess, a guy of interest to her.
It was somebody that was interested in having a dating relationship with her, and I think they came to an understanding that it wasn't going to be that type of relationship because of his sex offender registry.
But they
were friends.
But she had confided in him.
Yes.
About whatever this protective order thing
Correct.
was. So,
and about some physical violence that had occurred.
So with that, he came on the map, right? And he lived not far. He lived like Magnolia area.
Right.
That's like maybe a 15, 20-minute drive from
If you
from
take
our city.
1097 straight through, you can get there in 20 minutes easy.
Right. So he comes on the radar as a possible suspect because of defending her, being, wanting to date her.
He had made the statement to her that if he hurts you, me having been in prison, I know people who can get things done, which of course is going to be a huge red flag to us.
Right. So we'd like to talk to that person. So
More of a herring.
So we have the autopsy. The autopsy's coming up, and I've had a little bit of rest, and Keith's had a little bit of rest. So we're heading that way, and our CSI at that time was Darla King. She's going to meet us there, and she plays a factor in a second. So Keith, as we're heading there, he made the comment, and you mentioned it's July, it's hot. We've been to decomp after decomp after decomp. So I think Keith and I had gone to like 8 within the past week or so,
Right.
and they don't smell great. So
It's a mild.
and so Keith is basically saying, look, we got to find some solution to this, right? So I told him we're heading to the autopsy. I said, look, I've been really thinking about this, and I have an idea. I said, let's go by one of the home building stores. I can't remember, Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever. We stopped by. I said, let's get a painter's mask. It's one with the charcoal that fits in and everything. And I said, we'll see if it works. I already looked at it. I said, they're $40. I said, and if they don't work, I said, they got a great return policy. We'll take it back after the autopsy, right?
I bet they'd love that.
So we had the autopsy with them, And of course, we get a hard time when we walk in, right? Because normally we don't have these masks on. You're just sucking it up,
That's
and
right.
whatever happens, right? So, but the reason I knew they worked is that during the autopsy, they make the Y incision. Obviously, gases expel and those things, and Keith and I were fine. We couldn't smell anything. It was we were able to work and without an issue. But I saw Darla sort of like, I won't say go limp, but you could see that she definitely moved when that gases was released.
Physical reaction.
So and looking at her, I was like, yeah, these are working fine. And I think within the next week or two, all the CSIs had gone to Lowe's or Home Depot, and they all had masks at that point. But so tell us what we found at the autopsy.
So, I mean, obviously they knew for a fact it was a bullet wound by the time they get there. They had straight through and through. But if you're talking about inside the pillow,
Right. Well,
Yeah.
as far as so we got bullets recovered, or it went through and through. So we
right, it was a
have,
perforating wound.
and it went through eye and skull.
Correct.
Right?
The entry was through what appeared to be a closed eye, and we had a stellate pattern, which meant it was a hard contact wound. But your exit was at an angle to the right rear.
So now on the
Left
scene, he was laying in bed.
Mm-hmm.
There's indication that probably sleeping at the time,
Right.
and we did get the pillow,
Mm-hmm.
and from the pillow we recovered.
A fired projectile.
Okay, so out.
Beautiful projectile too.
So out of that, something called, NIBIN, and able to determine not only what gun it possibly goes to, but also, what many people have heard of, matching the bullet to which particular gun fired. But in this case, we didn't have the gun. So we were looking at it, and so they at least could come back and say, this is the type of weapon, and these are the brand.
There was a list of 8 manufacturers that this gun could possibly belong to, and no more.
Right.
Which, great. I mean, that's great narrowing.
So it at least possibly puts us on the right track later if we're trying to find those things, right? So that sort of leads to a break in the case, sort of. Okay, so it just more throws red flags up, but a break in the case. So right after we figure out that this belongs to one of these manufacturers,
Right.
We get a call from a neighbor, okay, who says he's missing a gun, and he lives, I don't know, it's like 3 or 4 houses down, but he was on
he's
the
3
street,
houses
right?
down.
So he's down the street from where this happens, and he's missing a gun that matches a manufacturer and caliber we're looking for, and so now we would like to talk to him, and what he explains, I guess there was a death in the family. He had a gathering, so we go over. I know that we had taken pictures of the garage that it was in. There was like a drawer it was in or something.
There were drawers in, and our CSIs actually took the drawer.
Right. So tell me about the gathering that's going on.
So the original gathering, the caller is what we'll call him, had lost his father just like shortly before this, within a week, and they were having the wake there at the house. And during the course of that, he kept that pistol in the drawer with an extra magazine, ammo, and his wallet. And what led to his discovery of that pistol being missing is he had gone down the street to the liquor store, trying to buy some alcohol. When he got there, or some beer rather, to continue the gathering, he got there and realized he didn't have his wallet. So he gets back to the house and finds that, he opens the drawer where he normally keeps it and finds that the pistol's missing. He didn't report it at the time for whatever reason. He assumed, his assumption was that his dad had moved the pistol without telling him, and now dad passed away. He's not
Right.
going to be able to find the pistol.
Now he had other people over at this gathering, right?
Correct. He had some neighbors had come over to kind of mourn with him.
Right. So, I mean, was this like an actual wake, like the funeral had happened? They had this going on, or was this?
This was not an actual. This was not the funeral home type wake. This was just a family gathering. In the interim, before they had all the official ceremonies and stuff, this was family only, and of course, like I say, a couple of neighbors came over.
Okay. So I know that one person came of interest out of that. That was a relative. I guess they had come down.
It's a cousin.
A cousin. So he's brought up, and we're certainly going to talk to him in a little bit. But then, as we're still sorting through this case, okay, some more time goes by. We're trying to get fingerprints off the drawer and all this. We get another break in the case, right? The same neighbor calls and says, "Hey, I found the victim's truck."
Oh, by the way, interesting enough, literally 40 minutes before he called about the truck, Darla King and I, the CSI, had been in the DPS helicopter flying over that neighborhood looking for this truck, taking aerial of the scene, and that truck wasn't anywhere to be found.
Right. So it wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
And
And
then
then the amount of time it took us to land in Conroe and drive 15 minutes back, the truck appeared.
Yeah, he had found it.
Yes.
Right? So
A little suspicious.
So now we have him missing a gun that matches the type used in the murder, and he's found the truck
That was missing from the scene.
Is missing, and y'all did not locate with a helicopter
Right.
over the area, right? So, needless to say, he's cranking up pretty high on the suspect list, which is not where he wanted to be.
No.
But, so, the truck was found it's not a marina, it was like a timeshare.
So it's a large parking lot that is shared by apartments and some vacation townhomes, and which adjacent to its own docks and marina. So yeah, it's a vacation area that people just randomly stay in.
Right, but it actually led to some other problems because it being a timeshare, most timeshares are like from a Saturday to Saturday, right? Or Saturday, Friday, whatever, right? So if someone's there and that truck was not there yesterday and it's there today or whatever the case may be, the people that were staying there last week are no longer there.
Not the same people you talked to today.
Right, they've moved on, so it's not like we can go door to door and try to interview these people and go, "Hey, how long's the truck been here?" Or anything like that, right? But we did, and I remember, I can't remember if it was maintenance or a cleaning person at the facility.
It was the maintenance person for the townhomes.
So we talked to them, and what they were sure about, though, is that the truck that was sitting there had not been parked there at that location earlier that week.
Right.
And like, okay, well, how are you sure? I mean, because it's literally just parking spaces, right? I mean, how do you know it's this one, not that one? And everybody said, well, that's where I always park, right? So I've been parking in that spot until, this truck shows up. So it gave us an indication that this truck had been moving. It's been coming and going, and whether it's been coming from this place, I mean, we knew that it was here now, but whether it had, been here before. And that led to, I want to say, an elderly lady there. And she was able to at least tell us, she didn't know what park space, but knew it had been there earlier in the week. So at this point, we at least know this truck has been coming and going from this facility. So again, at this point, we just have very, very suspicious neighbor who has a lot of clues in our case. But we find in the truck, in processing it, we find a map, and that map is to a hotel.
Yes.
Really had no link to any of that. That easily could have been the Denslows, right?
Absolutely. There was other paperwork in that truck that.
There was a date on it that would have been very close to the time that he would have died. Again, we don't have that exact time, but so it still raised suspicion, but it wasn't anything really explained so much at that point. But I would say the real break that happens is when the stepfather calls. Now, the stepfather, when we speak of the stepfather of Brian Winnebauer.
Correct.
Okay, so he had called patrol, actually, right? So he basically is calling in and says that he believes his son has something to do with this, that his son has been very interested in this case, and understand that they live on the same street also, right?
They're the fourth house down. So where our guy that's missing the gun is third house down, this person is fourth or fifth.
So he lives like next door.
Yes.
Or very, very close to where the gun's
Very
missing,
close.
and certainly very close to the crime scene. But the stepdad calls because his son has been very interested in the case. I think was taking him to the library, right? So he sits at the library all day researching the case and makes some comment to him that the detectives don't have any clue what they're doing, right? Or they don't know anything about it.
They're stupid. They don't have any clue what they're doing in this investigation. They're asking for everyone's help.
Right. So, and
Which,
we all
of
know
course-
that we put everything in the media that we
Yes.
can on every aspect of the case. But either way, so he believes that that there's no leads on this or whatever. So, but he's very infatuated with trying to find out about this case.
He's printing out these articles and he's following the case, I mean, to a T.
So, the stepdad informs us that his son is out on parole. Okay, he's been to prison before for burglarizing a house, and he's scared of his son. At the time he calls patrol, he is sitting in a closet. He has got a gun, and his son is not being belligerent. It's nothing like he's afraid because his son's doing something in the next room. It's just because of his past history and because of his infatuation with the case, he is scared for himself. Now, I will say, out of this case, one great thing that happened, and just I can't brag enough about the patrol division on this, is they had enough wits to not go to the house and ask him to meet them somewhere.
Right.
So he met them close by. It was like a dead-end road.
So
or
yeah,
just
there's a
cul-de-sac.
dead end with a it's kind of a loop road that dead ends at the lake with docks and everything. And they actually had Detective Bibbs and I meet them out there with him.
Right. So what further did he have to say on that one?
So he was scared, and he said the one thing that really scared him the most is not only was his son following this case and just so intent on it, what scared him the most about it is after they talked about it for a minute, or for a day rather, his son started following him from room to room every time he'd get on the phone. He started acting as if he was a part of this case, or acting as if he was a problem.
So, and rightfully so. I mean, he had been to prison before for burglary, for having a gun, for entering houses. So, I mean, it's not like he went to prison for drugs or something,
DWI,
unrelated that doesn't sort of match this. This is sort of matching what's happening. So the next thing that was going to happen on it was to start doing interviews, and it was very typical. I mean, we interview anybody associated with the case. We've already certainly been interviewing the person who found the truck and the one who is missing the gun. So next is bringing in the stepdad. We're bringing in the cousin from the family thing, and we're bringing in Brian. Okay, so while y'all are doing interviews of all these people, I can't remember if I think I was still with Keith at that point. We're heading out with his parole officer because we know that if he's in a house with guns, which obviously he was because his father has a gun in the closet that he's protecting himself with, and he's not supposed to have alcohol. So his parole officer is meeting us at the house to do, just inspection of is there a violation of this, right? We certainly find he's got alcohol in his bedroom. There's alcohol in the fridge. There's things like that he's not supposed to have. So he's certainly in violation, and possibly under, I don't know, normal circumstances, it would not get you a blue warrant and sent back to prison, but it certainly was enough that we had something that we could talk about, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me about talking to the cousin.
So that was an interesting one. This you got to keep in mind, in 2008, in July of 2008 especially, our unit, Major Crimes Unit, had only been formed for about 3 months. I mean, all of us had worked murders before, but it was randomly for most of us in that unit. So we were trying to get all of our experience and all of our training put to good use to prove that this unit was effective. So one of the classes that we had the opportunity to attend, of course, was all of our interview and interrogation schools. And in interviewing this cousin, one of the things that I found is some of the stuff we've been taught was dead on. And that was that as we put pressure on him, because he looked like a good suspect in this case. I mean, he had all the right marks. So we transitioned somewhat from an interview to an interrogation and started leaning on him. And his reactions, without giving too many of the secrets away, his reactions were 100% on board for an innocent person or someone that did not commit the offense. His reactions were exactly what you would expect from a truthful person.
Right. So, and I know that interview lasted for a little while. It's not like a poof, great.
Probably 2 hours at least.
So, and I've been there too. I mean, after doing it for a while, you just can tell. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know by indications, it's like this person has nothing to do with this, and so that's what you were getting out of this guy. So next up comes Brian, right? So Brian's our next interview, and we start finding out some things from him in the interview process. And again, so we're talking about the training and things for interview and interrogation. It is a two-part process. There is an interview part
Yes.
where we're actually trying to just let somebody tell their story and get the information and get the details. And it's during that time that we do get some information about him and a girlfriend. And one of the things that stands out is he makes a comment about going out with his girlfriend recently, and I can't remember if it was her birthday, his birthday. There was some
special occasion,
some celebration thing they were doing, and so then he mentions that they went to the Courtyard Marriott in the Woodlands,
Yes.
which is the address on the map.
On that map.
Okay, so, and I remember immediately calling Mark Wright, which is our crime scene investigator, who had been working and fingerprinting that drawer. He said, quit fingerprinting the drawer,
Drop what you're doing and get on that map.
get on the map and see what you can find on the map, right? So y'all are still in the interview. At this point, I think we believe we're looking for video, right? We want video.
Right.
At that point, Billy Ballard was our forensic specialist for videos and computers things. So Billy and I were headed down and to look at the hotel. If I remember, Billy went with me. Keith may have been involved too, but we head down to go check out the hotel, right? And at this point, obviously, we have the truck, we have pictures of the truck, and so we go to the hotel, and I'm sure they have many people come and go, right? So it's like, okay, what's our chance?
It's a shot in the dark.
That you remember this person unless they stayed here, right? If we have a name. So we go there and we ask, did you have this person here? Which again, they also have many people come and go. And they said yes. They did come by, and I remember them specifically. And the reason why is because he had come in and they said he sort of made a stink about things, because when he had made reservations, obviously it was not for this hotel.
Right.
Okay, so he thinks he has a hotel reserved for him and his girlfriend, and they say, no, we don't, but let me call around other hotels. So they start calling the ones that are around them that maybe, because, I mean, literally there's Courtyard Marriott, and then right next to it is Marriott something else, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it's very possible you just are at the wrong location. So they call around, and at the end of it, they couldn't find any place that he had registered in. Now, who knows? Maybe he was lying to his girlfriend, really didn't have a hotel. But the only hotel that they had left, or the only room they had left, was like their most expensive suite or something, right? So it was $300 a night, and certainly not in a category he wanted to pay for.
Right.
But, and the other thing that stood out was that a headlight was out on the truck, which helped in finding the video, right? Because when you're looking at nighttime video, it's not always that clear, but if you have one headlight out, it makes it a lot easier to find the vehicle.
Vehicles.
Okay. Another thing that he mentioned during the interview was that while they were at the hotel, that he went to Target with her to buy a Tostino's pizza. Because, I mean, if your girlfriend's coming to town and you got to take her out and really wine and dine her, you take her for a Tostino's pizza from Target, right? So now, for those unfamiliar with Target's loss prevention system, okay, it is intense. Do not steal anything from Target. They have a very good system there. So I went to Target. I said, hey, I'm looking for someone who bought a Tostino pizza on this particular day, right? All they had to do was take a barcode of the Tostina pizza and said, yep, we only sold one on that day, okay? By them knowing they sold that one, they were able to give me the date and time of the cashier, which has video at the cashier. So we have Brian on video with his girlfriend at the cashier buying the Tostina's pizza. And then I said, well, do you have video in the parking lot? And they said, well, we've been doing construction. Only one camera's working. All the other cameras are not working. I said, okay. So the only camera they had only focused on one particular parking spot. All the other parking spots you couldn't see. He parked in that one parking spot.
And that just doesn't happen in murder cases.
So we have him driving the truck, parking in the only spot that can be recorded on the video. So at this point, we have him in the deceased truck. That still doesn't get murder, okay?
No.
We have him in the truck.
Doesn't mean he didn't have permission to take that truck before the guy was killed.
So we still got to get around to the killing, right? So we certainly have him using the truck. We have him with his girlfriend at the map in the truck. So tell me a little bit about the interview of talking with him.
So he was an interesting interview because he came in under the guise of, hey, we're just interviewing everybody that's in the area, anybody that has had any contact with Jerry. We understand that you might be able to help us out. We're stumped. And I decided during that interview to play along to that. I mean, look, we're stumped. We don't know what to do. Help us out. So he at first was very helpful. And this is when he started giving us all these information and things like that. If I remember correctly during the interview, he admitted clearly, obviously, that he was at the hotel and he had gone to Target, but he said he was in his girlfriend's vehicle, even though she had flown down from Dallas.
Right. Said her parents lived close by.
Yes,
and
parents lived close by and they
vehicle
used
from
that
there.
vehicle, which we knew obviously wasn't true. So that led me to believe that we probably had our right person. As we went a little further into it and the more lies he told, we tried to transition from that interview to the interrogation stage. And it was almost instantaneous. As soon as we put pressure on him, he exhibited all of the physical attributes of someone who's being untruthful and trying to be untruthful. I mean, he crossed his arms. He actually had his arms pressed so tightly into him that he was cutting off his own breath. He backed himself up against the wall. It was quite clear that he wasn't being truthful.
But of course, their thing is as far as excuses, and finally, I mean, we do get to a point that he's saying, okay, yes, this happened, right? He confesses. He says that this happened.
Yes, I shot him.
But now we get to his reason on why, right? First off, and this, as we reflect back to the victim, where you actually see him in bed, and there is like a towel or shorts. I can't remember what was on the floor, but there was
a pair of
shorts,
denim shorts, and a pair of socks.
Okay, so he claims that there was a disturbance between the two, and that during the disturbance he trips or something.
He was trying to back away. His version of the truth is the victim was laying in bed. He came to confront him about an alleged incident that happened earlier. He had the gun out. And as he's backing away, he tripped over the shorts, and the gun went off and miraculously struck him in the closed eye.
Right. So, as far as the way that Mr. Denslow was laying, we had spoke to
The ex-girlfriend.
Ex-girlfriend, and so she basically told y'all.
Well, one of the questions we asked her during her interview was, so how long did y'all live together? It was like 1.5 2 years. Okay, so how did he lay when he slept? And when she described his position of sleeping, it was he usually laid on his left side. He usually had his knees either curled up next to him. He wore only boxers, and he always had one specific arm tucked like this and the other arm on top of that, which is exactly how we found him.
Right.
Blankets pulled up.
Which leads you, I mean, he's sleeping.
He was sound asleep when he was shot.
Right. I mean,
The fact that it was through a closed eye at
we
contact.
have closed eye, we have, yeah. So obviously that doesn't go along with.
Well,
with
and the
our
shorts,
story.
if you look at the photos of the shorts laying on the ground, they're not rolled up as if somebody tripped over them. even though it's not a definitive, there's no short science that you can look at.
Right.
You could look at things and say, okay, this is consistent with having just been taken off,
Right.
as opposed to
Someone
tripped over
tripping
and
on
drugged.
it or whatever.
Right.
So his story's not adding up.
No.
I mean, he stays with that story, right? But and he had said there's confrontation earlier, but again, nothing that would lead to the disturbance in the house. We find nothing of that.
He's alleging that he actually left the house, went and got the gun, and came back
Right.
back to protect himself from the earlier
And I guess we
incident.
should be clear on that. Is he's not saying there was a disturbance, like some verbal that led to a fight,
No,
that
no.
led to a shooting.
There was a disturbance. There was a break in time where he left and went and stole this gun,
Right.
and then came back to the house and entered through an unlocked back door.
And part of it was over money.
Sure.
He had come over. He's asking for money. He's asking for basically
The use of the truck.
use of the truck, and these type of things. And he's saying that during this conversation, that at some point, Mr. Denslow promised him the truck. He would allow it, and then later told him no.
Right.
That he couldn't have it. He leaves home, and he's just stewing about this, and then decides to go back. And I'm trying to, was the door unlocked? How did he get back in?
So he got back in. The front door was locked, but the back patio door was left unlocked, and very few
And
people
they've been
knew
drinking beer.
They've been
out
drinking
beer.
Yeah,
out,
I can
out
remember.
on the back patio.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he knew that back door was unlocked.
Okay. So he comes in through there, he shoots him, and then so that's about as much of a confession as we get. I mean, he admits to doing it.
Yes.
Even if he's lying about how it occurs or whatever. I mean,
And that's the beautiful thing about those kind of confessions, is the provable lies work as good as the whole truth.
so the next thing that we certainly want to know is
Where's the gun?
where's the gun, right? Okay, which he admitted also to taking the gun from the neighbor, right? He was at that gathering,
He was at that family gathering.
so he was there. He took the gun from there. All intents purposes, we believe that's the gun. We don't have the gun.
We don't have it with us, but it's the right caliber. It's the right make.
So, and he even described a uniqueness of it. It had like a laser sight that was not working.
Right.
And so he describes all the details of it. Now, so what did he tell you he did with the gun?
So he told us that once this was over, he drove around for a while in the victim's truck, realized that he had some really big problems that he had to resolve, and one of them was getting rid of the gun. So he told us he took it to the 1097 bridge. And for those that aren't familiar with the area, the 1097 bridge is a very, very long bridge that goes across part of Lake Conroe, linking one neighborhood to another, essentially. It's the only way you can go across 1097 and get from Willis, Texas to Montgomery, Texas. Very, very long bridge. He said he rode out to the middle of it and tossed it over.
And I remember something specific about this. That
Yes.
it was total BS.
Yeah, it was absolute load.
So when you go across a bridge, you have the seams, the dunk, the dunk, the dunk.
Which is what he described them
And
as.
he did, and he says, I went out 21 to dunk the dunks.
Yes, he did.
And after I got to 21, that's when I threw the gun over. And we're like, no, that is.
That's exactly
So,
right.
We drove him out.
We drove out 21 to dunk the dunks.
We drove out there with him, and he said, no, this is where it is or where. So we bring him back, and that leads, of course, I mean, we have to check everything out, so we're going to look at possibly getting
Scheduling a dive team out there.
to go out there and all those things to try to look for this gun. And we get a phone call, this time from Brian Wimbower's
Biological father.
And what does he tell you?
So I walked into the office early the next morning because I was trying to get everything prepped for the dive team to go out and look for this gun. And his biological father called the main office line, and it just was a fluke that I happened to be the one that was there by myself, answered the phone, and he identified himself by name and said, I wanted to talk to you about my son's arrest for murder. I said, no, I don't talk about family. He goes, well, I have something you want. I said, what is that? He goes, well, was the murder weapon XYZ type of gun? I said, again, I don't discuss this over the phone. He goes, no, I have it here with me. I called my partner and said, let's go.
Right?
So we did. We drove over to the apartment complex where he was living. He opened the back door, and there on the back seat was the make and model, correct caliber of weapon, and it matched what was stolen from the neighbor down the street.
So how did he get the weapon?
So he got the weapon. He told us that the night that Brian's arrest came out on the news, the biological father gets a phone call from his best friend, from the father's best friend, and said, "Hey, your son sold me a gun a couple of days ago, and I don't want it in my possession.
I want
You
nothing
need
do
to come
with
get
this."
it."
Right. If
Because
this is
the one
related.
thing that this best friend had asked him, said, "Hey, does this have any heads on it, or is this used in any murders?"
Right.
And he said, "No, absolutely not. It's stolen, but it's not reported, so it's good to go." So this guy, okay, it's not a murder weapon. We're good. As soon as he found a murder weapon, take it and get it away
Everybody
from him.
has standards. Everybody,
No matter what they are.
Stolen's okay, as long as it hadn't been used in a murder
Absolutely.
yet.
And of course, that gun was test fired later, and it was the murder weapon.
So it matched the bullet.
Yes.
And then also there was video around town.
Mm-hmm.
We had found that he had been using the truck on and off for days.
Like it was his own.
I think there was a pawn shop that he had pawned movies that, in talking with family members of Denslow, believed that some of those were his movies.
Well, we were able to prove that too. I don't know if you remember that part, but after we got those back, and the family members said one was specifically a Star Wars, part of the Star Wars series movies, and it actually, although Winterbauer had pawned it, it had Denslow's thumbprint on the
Nice,
movie.
right?
Yeah.
So he pawning his stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, we have him benefiting financially from
the
gain,
homicide, yes.
from the truck, from stuff. So I know we have him at the bank.
Yes.
I know we have pictures of him there
in the victim's truck.
in the victim's truck. So he had used this until. And the only reason, and remember that 7 days, the 7 days of him decomposing, that's when he was using the truck.
Right.
Once he realized that the police were involved in looking,
We were getting way too close to him being down there talking to the guy that found the truck.
right, so at that point he got rid
He's
of it.
done with it.
So, and it, that's, I remember him saying that's, once we started getting close, that was it. A unique thing that we found out later also is while we were working the initial scene, he was driving back and forth on a golf cart watching us work the scene.
Yes.
So again, he only lived a few
houses down.
few doors down. So
If you remember when we were out there at the scene, before they started doing the golf cart, they had lawn chairs lined up. And we
Yeah.
made a comment, look at all these people watching us. They get a live version of First 48, right?
Right.
And it turns out he is one of the 5 people that were out there.
right. So the conclusion of this. I know that it was considered for capital murder due to the robbery, due to the truck, due to the DVDs. So what was the end result? What he get charged, and what was the?
We charged him with capital because of some circumstances surrounding the potential of that earlier disturbance we had discussed. He was offered a plea, and if I remember correctly, he took and ended up with 45 years.
Yeah, that was says.
He was convicted of this offense, and he is currently in TDC.
So, and that wrapped it up for him. And in his previous burglary thing we had not mentioned earlier, apparently he had tried this before. He broke into a house. He had a gun. He put it to someone else's head and pulled the trigger.
Fortunately, didn't know how to operate the
It
gun.
just didn't go off.
It clicked.
So he went to burglary. He went to prison for burglary for doing the same thing. It's just the gun didn't fire.
Well, and the outcome of that one, of course, I don't know if you remember, but after it went click and didn't fire, the homeowner took the gun away from him and whipped his rear end with it.
Right. So, but he is put away now, and everybody did a great job on the case. Just one of many that we worked, and
It was a good start to that unit.
great turnout. So, again, as we wrap up for a day, Paul, thank you so much
Absolutely.
for
It's
coming
always my
on.
pleasure.
And thank you to our producers here and help from Lone Star Community Radio. If you have an idea and would like to start your own radio show, contact Dick at irlonestar.com. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, or you'd like to be a guest or sponsor the show, contact me at dan@crimescenetoday.com. Thank you for listening.